John, we've just had the government's latest Living with COVID plan. There's not too much clarity for tourism businesses, but what's your take on where we are at the moment?
Well, since the middle of December, I said we wouldn't be open till the 1st of June next year, and I'd still hold that. And there's two sides to this. There's one, government regulations, and there's public willingness to travel. And I don't believe we will have public willingness to travel in sufficient numbers until the vaccine is well spread. And I don't see that happening until the middle of the year. So I would be very, very happy if we got open on the 1st of June, because that would be 6 weeks earlier than we got open last year on the 10th of July. And we had an extremely good year, despite the fact we were only open for 10 weeks.
Albeit from the domestic market only.
100%, 100%, and they deserve 100% credit for supporting the industry and coming up. It's very interesting actually, because to a large extent, the Irish haven't holidayed in Ireland for years. They've taken breaks, but they haven't actually gone on a week or a 10-day holiday, which is what they did last year. And I think in the main, the reaction and the experience they had was extremely positive. Yeah. So I know from reservations with ourselves, a lot of people have rebooked again for this year, which is good. Yeah. That puts pressure on properties and businesses insofar as looking after a person for a break is very different than looking after a person for a holiday. Yeah. Because if they're with you for 10 days, the same restaurant with the same menu doesn't cut the mustard. So you need to chop and change much more, be much more flexible in your approach this season coming than we would traditionally be. Yeah.
And if we were to reopen, say on the 1st of June, which I think we'd all be delighted with, how much notice do you think as a tourism operator and a hotelier would you need to get everything ready for 1st of June opening your doors?
Okay. I love the question. I would need 10 days notice to be up and running. And I would hope that once that clarity comes into the marketplace, the market will book fairly quick. I've experienced that this week in Dromquinna. We opened on the 15th of February, the reservation book in Dromquinna for our glamping and our potting sheds. And we were full on the evening of the 16th for the year. We had a phenomenal 48 hours. It was just horrendous, and the pressure on the office below. But that is the pepped up demand that is there. And that was 100% repeat business that we were taking back into us. So I think the amount of time that we would like to be notified prior to opening is very different from the amount of time the government can actually give it to us, because I think that it all depends on where the numbers are. But I suspect that if in the middle of April, end of April, they should be giving us some sort of clarity as to when we open. But I would be of the opinion we should be to open ready tomorrow, and then all we have to do is flick on the switch and put everyone back in place and let it roll, because as you know, there's no one doing anything at the minute. So it's not as if we have to scramble all over the place looking to put the team together. And we've kept in contact with them on a weekly basis. They've been well looked after on the payment scheme from the government, and supports that have been put in place. So it is what it is. We just have to open when we can open. That's all we can do.
And I suppose when we open, we want to stay open. We don't want this sort of rolling lockdown period. So I think it's vitally important, isn't it, that we do finally, once and for all, suppress the virus, get the vaccinations rolled out so that tourism and hospitality, as well as the wider economy, can start functioning normally again.
Yeah, and to a certain extent, that isn't totally up to us as a country, because this is a worldwide pandemic and no country opened and stayed open. Everyone has had rebounds. So once travel, which seems to be a major issue, and winter months when people are dining in and people are closer together, they're the two, in my mind, they're the two black spots on it. And certainly last year, when we opened on the 10th of July, we were extremely nervous. We had protocols in place. They wouldn't have it in the Manor hospital in Dublin, and everything was spick and span. Within 2 weeks, you tend to kind of get a little bit laxed. And I was a nervous wreck. I held a meeting then on around about the 20th of July, and I said, listen guys, now I said, we want to put this back on track. And the numbers kept coming through the front door. The numbers were phenomenal, and there was no cases of COVID in Kenmare. Yeah. And that has been the case right through until the kids went back to college in Cork. And then all of a sudden we had about 18 cases in Kenmare, but they all related back to that. So During the summer, when people were eating out, I don't think there was an issue whatsoever once there was proper hygiene and everything was kept above board. But come the winter months, then it seems to have increased in various different strains and whatever else. It's medical based, and there's enough people giving an opinion on that without me giving my opinion on it. But we just have to just make sure we're ready to go.
Yeah. How do you think the Irish government has done? I mean, it's an impossible situation to a certain extent. It's a global pandemic. Public health comes first and foremost. But, how do you think the government has done in terms of, I suppose, supports for the industry whilst it's closed? And if you like, a little bit of a future roadmap for how it may be able to reopen again?
Yeah. I think when it hit us back in March, we were very lucky that we had a doctor as a Taoiseach, because he understood the implications of a pandemic and how it would spread. And I think the financial supports that were put in place by the government and by revenue were implemented very, very quick. And there wasn't an awful lot of hiccups along the path in the schemes that were put in place. And when we're members of Relish Chateau in the Park Hotel, and I'm on the board of directors of it anyway, and we have a meeting every month or twice a month back in March and April. And we were much stronger supporters here than there were in other countries, including England. So I think we can get very blinkered, and we can be very negative on a whole number of fronts, and it's wide open to be negative. In the main, I think we've done extremely well. I think we've been very well supported. I met a hotelier the other day, like ourselves, closed, everyone in the country. I said, "How are you getting on?" He says, "I've never felt like a farmer in all my life." He said, "I'm getting a check every week for being closed." So you can be despondent and say it's dreadful, we don't know when we're opening. We have a support and various different supports in place. It's January, February and March. There isn't two handfuls of hotels in this country that made money in January, February and March in their history. So we're closed, we're being supported, and we're in a worldwide phenomenon, not a national phenomenon, and we have to just bear with it. And I think overall, I think that the supports have been as generous as could be. And the last time this country borrowed on the same level as they're borrowing at the moment was to pay overseas bondholders. The money never touched the ground in the country. It went straight out into pockets and wherever all over the world. This time it's actually going into pockets of people. And that will come back. This borrowing to get us over this hurdle is very, very different than what happened in 2008, 2009, 2010. So the national debt increasing like 20 billion a year, whatever it is, savage money in a normal course of events. That isn't the situation we live in the moment, and it is going into the people's pockets on the ground. So that will come back in VAT receipts over the next 2 years. So overall, I would be very happy. I would have no complaints about the supports that have been put in place for the industry and for us as businesses. Yeah,
and going forward, things like the VAT of 9% is due to expire this December, which seems nonsensical. The stay and spend scheme, that domestic market stimulus, hasn't worked. Could the government sort of adjust or be a bit more ambitious on some of those policies?
Yes, but we can't expect to get money handed to us in January and then not pay VAT. Give me business all day, every day, and I'm quite happy to pay 13%, 13.5% VAT. It doesn't bother me because it's relative. We have a good turnover. Having no business, 9% is much more attractive. But we need our tills ringing, we need our beds filled, we need our dining room tables filled, and that's the most important thing. The stay and spend scheme didn't work. I think it was too complicated. People didn't grasp it, and it came in at the back end of the year when we were closing anyway, so it wasn't worth the paper was written on. I proposed way back in April of last year, I proposed a scheme that would have rewarded all HSE workers and Dublin Fire Brigade with a €1,000 holiday voucher for Ireland. And I wanted to do it in conjunction with the IHF. And as we all know, there was no tour buses on the road, so there was a huge amount of vacancy in and that would have put money straight back into the hands of the HSE. Said, thank you very much for a job that you've done extremely well in the circumstances that we all find ourselves in, and the country want to say thank you. We would have sponsored it by 50%, quite happy, because a lot of those rooms that were coming in on coach tours were discounted rates, and the rate that you've been getting at 50% wouldn't have been an awful lot different when we took into that in consideration, and the government would have sponsored it the other 50%. It didn't happen. It rolled forward, and then we came with the stay and spend, and it's just too complicated. But they have given people money every week. And there isn't a huge, listen, people are stretched, don't get me wrong. I fully understand people with 2 kids living in an apartment and no fresh air, no jobs. It is very, very difficult on people. But the scheme that has been put in place is more generous than any other country that I know of in the world. So we would have, that money is in accounts. You can see it on the 14 billion that's in savings. And you can, if you phone anyone for deliveries, God love you, if you're looking for a cooker or a washing machine, there is none in the country. Televisions, all of that stuff has just gone out the door. Paint, I'm painting at home at the minute. I'll put it to you like that, right?
Yeah.
And we bought paint recently, and your man said, well, he says, I hope I can get it. He said, we're out the walls. So all of that is money coming back, and it's spending. And once we get doors open, please God, will be allowed to stay open. But to a large extent, that really isn't up to us as a country in the long run, because this is a worldwide pandemic, and we cannot close our borders. We have a huge number of overseas international companies here who have people in and out all the time, which is necessary. And we're right next door to one of our biggest trading partners. We need connectivity over and back there the whole time. We're not an independent island, we're a split island, so we're not in control of our seas and our borders in that respect. So it's not like New Zealand. When people say, oh, it's New Zealand, they did a great job. They did a great job. They're in the South Pacific, 1,000 miles away from any other country. They don't have the connectivity with other countries that Ireland has, and it was easy enough to shut it down. They did let in the America's Cup, so there was a lot of people in and out for that, and they managed that well. So, but in Ireland, it's a different kettle of fish. But once the hope is, anyway, listen, everyone knows if the vaccine goes out and the vaccine works, we're all home and dry. But we just have to wait and see how that goes. And it's important how that goes in Brazil as it is in Ireland. And that's the question mark over it all.
Absolutely. You've been fairly active yourself, and your brother Francis have been fairly active during the last 12 months, maybe, during the period of the pandemic. I know you recently bought, I think it's the Lansdowne Arms Hotel opposite the Kenmare Park.
Yes.
I think the Kenmare Park has had a bit of restoration. Tell us a little bit about that.
A bit would be an understatement. The hotel was bought in 1980. Francis bought the hotel in 1980 and refurbished it. And then, like every hotel in the country, we have done rolling refurbishment since then. The world has changed. The five-star market world has changed. When the Park Hotel opened in 1980, if you drew a line from the Shelburne Hotel in Dublin to Dromoland Castle, there was no five-star hotel south of that line in 1980. It's phenomenal. Now we have 7 five-star hotels in a 30-mile radius of the Park Hotel. So the world has changed totally in the last 30 years from a hotel-based point of view. And the Park Hotel needed to revamp itself. So we've been planning this for 3 years. I planned it to start in January, and when we closed in October, we brought it forward, and we brought in Brian O'Sullivan from Boss Studios in London, who's just done all of Claridge's bedrooms. A lovely guy, worked with us years and years ago when he's from Kenmare originally, but has built up a huge reputation on the international interior design scene. And we've gutted the hotel from the front door to the kitchen door, including a brand new Moroni kitchen, a whole new restaurant, different dining style, different dining experience than traditional champagne bar in the middle of the room, a new bar, new lobby, new reception. But it'll be fantastic. But we're unfortunate in our timing insofar as builders are not working, but we'll get there all right.
Will it be completed in time for proposed June 1st opening?
It will. Yeah. Don't ask me how, but it will.
And then the Lansdowne Arms Hotel across the road, is there work needed to be done to that as well?
Yes, we have that totally gutted as well. We're re-roofing that at the minute, which is allowed under the current guidelines, and that is fine. And it will be far superior than what I expected it to be when we bought it. Yeah. It went into receivership in October. And I didn't actually go to see, because Kenmare is a small town, and if you're seeing going in the front door of a place, they'll all put 2 and 2 together. So I never actually went to see it until we wrote the check, and then we had it signed, sealed and delivered, and across the road and went in the door. And I was expecting a hotel that we would run at a mid-price point hotel with small bedrooms, small bathrooms, dated interior, dated services. That's what I was expecting. I went and I got the total opposite. I rang Francis and I said, Francis, come down here, please, so you see this place, because you won't believe it. And we came in. So our philosophy on it has changed since we actually bought it.
Francis didn't see it either. So you bought it sight unseen.
Well, we drive past it 20 times a day, and I've tried to buy it twice in the last 4 years. And I haven't been in it for 5 or 6 years now, but it's just I worked for Lee Kidney years ago, years and years ago, and we were building a spa at the time. And I said to him at the time, I said, like, have you figures done on building the spa? No, he says, I haven't. He says, we did a thing on the back of the envelope, he says, and it looked fine. And the Lansdowne is the exact same. You have a gut feeling about something, and if it is right, you'll just know it's going to work. And this is righter than right after we got in to see it. It is one of the oldest. It and Wooden Bridge, I think, in Ashford and Wicklow are the 2 oldest hotels in the country.
Okay.
And they've lovely high ceilings, 10-foot high ceilings. Like the feel of the building and all inside when I went into it are just fantastic. So we thought we'd run it under the Park Hotel and manage it out of the Park Hotel. And when I went in to look at it and all, I said, no, it needs its own team and it needs its own 2 feet. And we set it up as its own private entity to stand on its own 2 feet and not just be a feeder hotel for Dromquinna for weddings in that. So I'm really excited about that. The Park Hotel is a massive job. It's a huge undertaking. It's a whole restoration of the ground floor in its own right. But I'm actually more excited about the Lansdowne.
Great. What's your view? I mean, through your experience with your own businesses, but also at your service, which is, I know there's a new series coming up. You get a great insight into the quality and the breadth of Irish tourism and hospitality. What's your view on where we are at the moment and how, if you like, we all know COVID has had a shattering economic impact in the last 12 months. So, some of us are concerned that the quality of the product might be diminished going forward. Are you concerned on that front, or do you think we're okay?
Yeah, no, that wouldn't worry me at all. Worried me more about that was the huge increase in hotel numbers back in the early 90s under tax-driven schemes that didn't have a commercial base. That has done more damage to it from a quality point of view than COVID is going to do to it. The vast majority of hospitality businesses in the country are owner managed, and their heart is in the right place. Their head mightn't be in the right place at times, but their heart is in the right place, and they're at the front, the cold face of their businesses, and that's what gives us the reputation around the world, is the hospitality that is received. And I think that will only be bolstered. And I know an awful lot of people say, no, where are we going to find staff when we open? It's going to be very tight. It is, but we're going to have no students going overseas. And so that whole pool is going to be here. And we're looking after a domestic market probably for the next 12 months at least. And it's going to be spread. If we get open and we stay open, that's going to be spread right out, please God, into October, November, December. And I wouldn't have a worry about it. I think when you travel middle anywhere in the world, particularly America, the quality of what we have in Ireland is far, far, far superior. Like you can go to the outskirts of Cincinnati and you won't have Wi-Fi in the hotel. And the food is all production food, but you may as well have to be blindfolded. You don't know what you're eating anywhere because there's no taste. It's bland. Like, there's none of that in the country. Like, we have a fantastic artisan food producers. We have wonderful touring and walking experiences in the country. We have fantastic prices at all price points, and a sector that is often overlooked but gives a great service to the country and a great experience for guests is the bed and breakfast. And there's a huge number of bed and breakfasts in the country giving a service and a breakfast far superior than an awful lot of places. And not many countries have that. So we have a huge amount going for us. So I wouldn't be despondent at all are worried that the COVID will have an impact on the quality of what we're doing. I don't think so. I think the opposite.
You mentioned the States there, for example, and I know the States would be an important market, particularly for the Kenmare Park. Have you stayed in touch? I assume you've stayed in touch with your sort of American clients and customer base. What's their view of, intention to travel when the time is right? Are they going to get back on planes and come back over in their droves?
Yeah, I suspect they will. I think there's two issues here, I suppose. One is there's going to be a time lapse between the domestic market getting on planes and heading for Spain, of work, which I'll be on the front of the first plane going out, okay? I'll be gone, like everyone in the country, okay? And there's a time lag between that happening and the overseas guests coming in the numbers that we require to replace the domestic market that has kept us busy for the last 12 months whenever we were open in that period. And that's a danger, that time lapse between the two. The Americans will travel, there's no question about it. I think the 5-star independent business will travel faster than any other market. And they won't mind coming long haul because they'll be up the front and they'll be in big seats and they isolate as needs be. I think the coach tour business will be slower to return. And I think the mindset of getting on a coach or on a cruise ship with a number of other people who you don't know, I just think that's going to be a little bit slower to come back, which causes problems and challenges for us on the ground here. Because I often notice this when you're driving into the hotel in the morning, you're passing the Kenmare Bay and the Brook Lane and Sheen calls, I take a spin around, see how every car park is, see how we're doing. If we're busy, everywhere is busy. If one place is quiet, every place is quiet. Yeah. And it's like a tide. We all go up and we all go down. Yeah. So if there is a void in the coach tour business, which leaves a lot of rooms empty, and that spreads the market out, and that means we all have a mediocre year as opposed to a good year. And that's the way it's going to be. There's not a lot we can do. But from talking to agents in the States, Margaret has had various webinars now in the last 2 weeks, and certainly from the third quarter of this year, they're planning.
Yeah. I think, the thing we're all slightly worried about is the connectivity. Will there be the same number of routes? What sort of prices will there be, because there might be less competition in the airs?
Yes, so I have a friend who does aerial photography, and he was up last week over Dublin Airport, and you'd want to see the back apron of Dublin Airport and the number of planes parked, and that's replicated right across the world. The only thing about that is airlines are there to get the planes in the sky, and they'll put the planes in the sky at a price point that makes it attractive for a person to get on. So we have a very willing market to get back to work in that sector. So when you look at, I don't know if you ever look at flight traffic, the AIS scheme for planes coming in. Actually, I was up this morning at 4 o'clock and I looked at it. That's how bad I am down here now, right? And anyway, it was full of Lufthansa, Qatar, and KLM coming over the Atlantic. Like there was about 30 of them coming in at the one at 4 or 5 o'clock this morning. How many are on each plane is a different kettle of fish, but certainly they'll start flying again. Once people start moving, that's their business, they'll start flying. So once we keep our connectivity within the States, which I would be slightly concerned about with Aer Lingus and the slots into Heathrow and their parent company, and how that pans out. Having said that, it has worked well in the past. We have the clearance in Ireland, so there's a lot of pluses for us here. So hopefully we keep them. But I think we had 19 daily connections to different cities in the States prior to closing, which is phenomenal for a country of 4.5 million on the west coast of Europe. So we need to get back to that kind of level, which maybe won't happen overnight, I don't suspect, but should happen, please God, in the next 2 years.
Great, John. Thank you so much, and the best of luck with all your various business ventures. And I hope to be down to you, maybe not June 1st, but later in the summer, certainly.
Hopefully June 1st. Listen, thanks very much indeed. Thank you.